one of the things they tried to do was put restrictive covenants on the land that the district owns. So if you look at this whole special district, Walt Disney Corporation obviously owns a lot of it, but the district owns other land.
So it really seems like Ron DeSantis is speed running, trying to be the most unpopular person in the country.
Quite frankly, I wasn't even thinking about that land. This was not something that was really important one way or another. We just wanted them to live under the same rules, pay the debt, pay the taxes, all that stuff. Oh, but come to think of it, now people are like, well, what should we do with this land? And so, it's like, okay, people have said, maybe have maybe create a state park, maybe try to do more amusement parks. Someone even said, maybe you need another state prison. Who knows? I just think that the possibilities are endless, and so that is now going to be analyzed to see what would make the most sense.
So that was Ron DeSantis just casually joking about the idea of putting a prison right next to Disney World just to prove a point to them, which on two layers we have to address. First and foremost, the idea that people in the audience were laughing at the idea of building a prison in a country which, mind you, has more prisoners than any other country in the world. And we are not the most populous country in the world. Just kind of speaks to the absolute shamelessness of the United States as a whole and our just relentless, bloodthirsty willingness to throw people in prison and jail for effectively no reason. If there ever was an authoritarian police state in the world, the United States is the most authoritarian, most police state on the planet, because by the numbers, it's pretty clear that we are. But then the next layer of this is just Ron DeSantis going after Disney in this way, and Disney pushing back on them by hosting a Pride event recently. Because you see, attacks on the queer community are not as popular as they used to be, and it turns out that large companies like to make money, which means they like to do and say things that are popular, not even necessarily because they actually politically agree with them. It's not like Disney is rolling out a bunch of queer characters on their movies and television shows, but you bet they're going to want to make sure that queer folks feel comfortable in their theme parks and feel comfortable watching their TV shows and movies. So of course, the companies are trying to cater at least enough to queer folks that people are engaging with their content and purchasing their goods and services. But you see, Ron DeSantis doesn't understand that concept and has decided to do things that are deeply unpopular, all because he wants to get a very small group of people incredibly active in the state of Florida, which is why he's pushing these extremely regressive policies with the schools in Florida, these extremely regressive policies trying to strip back the rights of gay folks and trans folks, all to just get his ridiculous over-the-top base just stirred up and angry in order to hopefully build up momentum for a potential political career. But of course, the potential for becoming the next Republican nominee is very much stifled by the fact that these giant corporations don't really like what Ron DeSantis is doing. And he seems to have forgotten the game that in the United States, of course, it is money that drives our political system. And also, you kind of have to be popular. If you have no popularity with the policies you're pushing, and you got no money because none of the big donors really want to support the unhinged things that you're pushing for, then it's hard to see how your political campaign could even move forward in the first place. Which is why Ron DeSantis is very likely to be part of a much larger trend across the country of the most unhinged transphobic weirdos losing their elections. And while we all can collectively look forward to that eventual day when these Republicans all do lose their elections and face the consequences of their ridiculous transphobic actions, we do need to recognize the real material harm that is being done to queer folks to this very day. Seriously, right now, it is becoming less and less safe for queer folks to live in many states across this country, and Republicans are actively pushing policies that put queer and trans people in danger. And while it's very likely that a lot of these laws will be stopped in the court system, the unfortunate reality is that not all of them will be. And in the meantime, there is still this widespread policing of the existence of queer folks, on top of just the random individualized violence that happens from an emboldened and bigoted segment of the population, which is why there's been a rise in hate crimes against queer folks and especially trans folks. Meaning that the unfortunate reality is, for many queer folks, and especially trans folks in Republican states, it is just becoming increasingly dangerous to be alive there. And it's becoming increasingly difficult to live there at all. Which is why there are actually a bunch of queer folks who who are in red states that are trying to leave, and many who have already left. And unfortunately, Republicans are already bragging about the fact that gay parents are feeling the need to move out of Florida because of the extremely restrictive policies in schools that they're pushing. You know, like rules that effectively ban just the mention of gay people in public schools. It makes it pretty hard to be the parent of a child when school teachers are literally not even allowed to mention that you are the parent of that child. Because it's not like they're going after giant corporations in terms of saying that they need to pay higher taxes or should be accountable to strict regulations to make sure that they're treating workers right or anything like that. No, of course, they're going toe-to-toe with corporations on the question of whether or not they think queer people should exist. The good news is Republicans are deeply, deeply unpopular on this front, and the businesses know what consumers want. The unfortunate reality is that in the meantime, while these people do hold positions of power and elected office, they are doing a lot of damage in the process, which is why it's so important that people pay attention, especially to issues like this, and speak up in support of trans people and do what we can to make sure that queer folks in red states are as safe as humanly possible.